It doesn't matter where the chips fall when the card is posted. You are going to make the most of your match. I'm breaking it all down next. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Right here on my channel, I make videos for fellow professional wrestlers at every single stage of their career. And I do this because when I was just starting out, in fact, for the first 3 years I was an active pro, I had no coach to teach me, nor did I have a mentor to guide me. And I really do believe that lack of access to veteran wisdom, veteran knowledge, veteran experience, I think all of that played a significant role in my failure to achieve my ultimate career goal. And I don't want that to happen to you. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead, join the Till We Make It tribe, subscribe down below, and enable notifications. Or if you want to take your education, your participation to the next level, come join these awesome people as part of our community over on Patreon. There's a link down below in the descriptus. Each and every week, I publish a video just for my patrons. This week, I made one all about capsule shows, and I'm working on one right now about the double-edged sword of nostalgia in pro wrestling. That one's probably coming out next week. You can be part of it all. If you got a PayPal account, a credit card, memberships start for as little as $5. All right, so let's jump into the concept of maximizing your match. How do you get the most out of your match regardless of where you happen to fall on the card? One thing you will rarely have any control over as a working pro is where on the card your match falls. And there are a lot of card positions that represent a lot of different challenges. And I want to help you tackle them all with today's video. Okay, we're starting our way at the bottom of the card and we're going to work our way all the way up to the top. Let's talk about when you are slotted into a dark match before the main card. And this is typically for one of two purposes, right? You're either there as part of a tryout or you're being sent to the ring essentially as a warm-up act. But regardless, if you want to get the most out of this match position on a card, then consider your mission for either of those two purposes to be the same. Your mission is to whet the appetite. You might be, as a warm-up act, whetting the appetite of the audience for what is yet to come later on the card. You're the first course coming out, but there are a lot of courses coming out after you, and you don't want to fill them up early. You're basically an appetizer, so whet their appetite. Or, if you're being sent to the ring as part of a tryout, it may not necessarily be the audience's appetite you are trying to whet. It's the people who could potentially be hiring you. You don't want to give away everything. Think of it like a first date. You don't get married on the first date, unless you're Kensuke Sasaki and Akira Hokuto, I guess. So keep that in mind. Don't give it all away on the very first date. You want to whet their appetite so they ask you out again. That's how you want to approach the pre-show dark match if you've been sent to the ring as part of a tryout. Before I go any further, would you leave a like on today's video, please? That signals to YouTube to share my videos with more and more people. It helps the channel to grow, and I would appreciate it. So, you're in position number 1. You are jerking the curtain in the opening match slot. How do you get the most out of being in the opener? Well, think of the purpose of the opening match. It is to set the tone for the entire evening. So you want to load up on clean, crisp wrestling. Don't necessarily choose the fanciest, most complex moves or spots that you know. Choose the most beautiful. The one that you are best practiced at, choose that over the riskiest or the flashiest. Leave high risk, leave flashy for later on in the card. You're just the opening match. And generally speaking, you want to be light on story. Save the heavy drama for the main event. Remember, a limp opener can kill the entire momentum of the opening half of a card, basically until the intermission or interval serves as a light reset for the audience. You don't want that hanging around your neck. Don't blow it for the first half of the card. If you want to make the most out of being in the opener, load up on clean, crisp wrestling by choosing the moves you do most beautifully. Keep it light on story, avoid heavy drama, and you want to keep the tempo quick. You want to move at a fun pace for the audience so they can't wait to see what's next. If you get out of the gate with a slow, methodical pace, you may not get any reaction by the time you're going home. And that's no good. You don't want to intentionally end in anti-climax. Give them a bit of a trailer for the movie that's yet to come. It's fun. It moves fast, but it's not heavy on drama. And it doesn't give the farm away either. We've all seen trailers that seem to tell us what half the movie's going to be about. And that's a mistake. Stick to what you do most beautifully and perform it artfully. Your match number 2. You are in the death spot. So named because it is the match most frequently forgotten by the audience. When presented with a long series, a string of any number of items, an audience is most likely to remember the first and the last, and maybe one thing from somewhere in the middle. And the further from that you get, the more likely you are to be forgotten. This is why match number 2 has been dubbed the death spot. It's the toughest match to be remembered after the entire card is over. And if you happen to be booked into the death spot, because somebody's got to be number 2 on the card, how are you going to maximize your spot? You're going to do it like this. Choose one memorable bump to showcase, especially if you, the person, the tag team that you're working against, has a specialty bump in their repertoire. And if you're not at all familiar with that concept, you know I've already got a video on the channel all about it. I'm going to make sure it's linked somewhere for you so you can click on it if you want to find out more about a specialty bump. But this is a great place to deploy it as a method of shocking the audience. It will make your match more memorable and make sure above all else that whatever you choose as your finish is easy to recall. It's got to make an impression. The match that percolates up first in my mind that did really well in the death spot is the Steiner brothers against the Head Shrinkers at WrestleMania 9. If you're looking for a memorable specialty bump and a finish you simply won't forget, check out Mania 9, Steiners and Head Shrinkers in the deathmatch spot. You looked at the lineup, and where are you slotted? Popcorn match. You're the first one after the break, after the intermission, after the interval. How do you maximize a match put in the popcorn slot? Here is how you do it. You're going to structure your match to be heavy on Act 1, on the shine, open, or promise section of the match. Because, as the popcorn match name implies, people are still coming back from the concession stand. They went to buy merch. They might still be waiting in line if the lines were exceptionally long, but you are still going to the ring. So what do you do when you're in that popcorn match slot? You make sure Act 1 is extra long. That way you haven't moved into the meat of the match while those last few stragglers are making their way back into their seats. Give them plenty of time to get situated back in with their fresh new merch or that big bucket of popcorn before you move on to the really meaty part of your match. Don't transition into the heat if there are still people out at the concessions, if they're still out at the merchandise stand. Just work patiently and front load your match. When Act 1 is the heaviest in the popcorn match, you ensure they're going to be ready by the time you get around to delivering the fireworks. Let's talk the semi-main event. After the death spot, this is the spot on the card most likely to be forgotten. And keep in mind, the semi-main event, the match that comes directly before the main event of the card, is often prescribed to be a palate cleanser. It comes between two very meaty portions, matches that are heavy on action, heavy on drama. And sometimes you got to make the most out of just being a palate cleanser. Not always, but sometimes. That concept of being the palate cleanser is one I explore in depth in my book Toolbox, Building Better Pro Wrestling. Sometimes the segues happen very organically here in the videos. I'll talk more about that in a second. Nevertheless, if you're in the semi-main event position and you are not prescribed to go to the ring simply as a palate cleanser, how do you maximize that position on the card? The trick is, do not do a full 3-act structure. You're going to go home at a surprising point in the match to ensure the crowd remembers that match. In addition to which, they are almost certainly going to see a full 3-act structure in the main event. And if what you deliver is too similar to the main event, guaranteed you'll be overshadowed by the main. People will go home thinking about that match as yours fades away into dull tableau. Don't allow that to be your fate. When you're booked in the semi-main event, avoid doing the full 3 acts and go home at a moment that shocks the crowd. Congratulations, you've made it all the way to the main event. The booker, the promoter, they've decided to entrust to you that most important position on the entire card. So, how do you get the most out of being in the main event? Well, I alluded to a little bit of this just a moment ago in talking about the semi-main. More than likely, you're going to deliver a full 3 acts. It's going to have a complete Act 1, complete Act 2, and complete Act 3, unless you're going out on a cliffhanger for some reason. So you've got the full skeleton, the full underlying match structure to play with. And that's great, but that is not enough in and of itself. You need more. You've got to be attuned to where the audience is at by the time you are going to the ring. And typically, that presents one of 2 scenarios. Number 1, you might be going to the ring and the crowd is already burnt out from too many giant bumps and big false finishes that happened during the mid-card. If that happens to you, lean away from the big bumps and lean into story development. A main event has to move the main story of any promotion forward in some way, or it will not satisfy a modern audience. So lean into that. Lean into the story beats. Give them great character development and make sure you advance the plot. If you head to the ring and the crowd is craving the big match feel, maybe they haven't been burnt out yet. Maybe your mid-card did a great job of setting the audience up to enjoy the main event. Well done to the whole locker room. What does that mean for you? You want to make sure you deliver a main event that has an epic feel. It has to have that so-called extra gear when you're deep in the 3rd act. And that means that you're going to engage 2 additional gear changes. One of tempo and one of emotion for that last 5% of the performance. Find that so-called extra gear by changing gears and reflecting that with a change in tempo and a change in emotion to get the most out of that main event spot. If mastering the underlying structure and design elements of professional wrestling matches is essential to your growth as a working pro, then go ahead and grab my book, Toolbox. You knew that was going to be the one at the end of today's video. Making Better Pro Wrestling. It's available as an ebook. Amazon will print one and ship it to you. You can listen to it as an audiobook over on Audible. I will read it to you myself. It's available right now. Toolbox, Building Better Pro Wrestling is going to help you level up your performance game inside the squared circle. And so will the playlist appearing on screen right now.